So, about Metroid Dread. Alright, yes, finally, some more of that sweet, sweet Metroid content. Nintendo knows what it is, except they won't make a new F-Zero ever, but that's an obvious legacy issue. Anyways, Metroid Dread is a direct follow-up to Metroid Fusion, an old 2002 Game Boy game where Samus goes to a space station based on the planet called SR-388, which is the setting of Metroid 2, Return of Samus, and there was no thought put into that naming convention for the planet whatsoever. Anyways, there's little floating blobs called the X-Parasite that take over the body and mimic the host. I guess Nintendo couldn't let that concept go after just one game and had to make it a big part of this game too. If you played that old Game Boy game, you'll know all about it. So, right out of the gate, sorry for the spoiler by the way, but my videos are pretty much always spoiler heavy, for better or for worse, but there's approximately 0 Metroids in this game, unless you count Samus and her painfully complicated DNA she has. I know that it's for the purposes of the story, but yeah. Still odd to not have the enemy for which the game's namesake is taken in the game, I think. So, the formula is still the same here, and if you've ever played a Metroid game, whether it be 2D or the Prime games, you're getting the same collection of power-ups and upgrades that Samus has acquired and lost a million times before. Honestly, I'm wondering how long Nintendo is going to keep this design philosophy up without thinking of something else. Like, for example, let Samus keep everything from her last game, and then make the new planet that you have in the new game even more inhospitable, and make her require new stuff to get through that. Kind of like new beams and suits, like from Prime 2, like the dark suit and light suit and stuff. If you have played the past Metroid games, you will totally see the unlocking of just about everything coming. I mean, the wave beam, the grappling hook, various suit, gravity suit, morph ball, and of course, the screw attack, the logo of the game due to how it trivializes general traversal once it's acquired. There's also notable omissions like the ice beam replaced with the ice missiles, which is definitely worse in my opinion. I definitely prefer the ice beam. There are enemy omissions other than the Metroids like Ridley or Crocomire. Brought back Kraid though, huh? Whatever. Anyways. This game seems to embody what they want first-party developed Metroid games to be going forward. It seems they found their formula at this point. The way Samus moves, the parry system, the quick morph ball, the map, the radar, all these things that were not in the franchise until the Samus Returns remake for the 3DS, now they came up with this. And since the Aeon abilities, which are new to Metroid Prime 2 for the 3DS, not Prime, the Metroid 2 for the 3DS, the remake, Return of Samus, the Aeon abilities return from that game and make it back to this one. This is finally how they want Metroid games to be structured, since everything before these last 2 entries seemed like they kept fiddling with the formula and tweaking it every time. These last 2 don't feel that way, however. I have a couple more nitpicks about this game before I get into all the stuff that makes it great. Not only for a Metroid game, but just great in general. A large part of the game as a whole, especially the first half, it's a stupid robot that helped title this game, according to game director and Metroid creator Yoshio Sakamoto, to help invoke the feeling of quote-unquote dread when thinking about entering its designated areas of the map. So, these robots are called Emmy, and they fucking suck ass. Now, you enter their area of the map via designated door types called Emmy doors, and the whole area that they're confined to is color-coded in a gray area on the map. Now, this is helpful, but here's my problem. This sucks ass. Big time. This game is at its best when you're doing anything other than being in an Emmy area. Not only does it make Samus seem weak, and believe me, she's not, even when she has all of her powers, and she's definitely not weak anymore even at that point, especially at that point, but it slows the game down significantly, and not by player choice. In many instances, you're forced to hide or simply stand in one spot with your phantom cloak on, trying not to be noticed. I hated this, and the fact that it one-shots you if it catches you is super dumb too. I mean, I understand what they were going for with all this, and you know, when you play test the game and you get all that, you're like, oh man, this is really tense, this is really something, blah blah blah. I get what they're doing and what they're trying to do, but it simply doesn't add up to fun gameplay to me. And the game shines when you're doing literally anything else at all. If the game ever slows down, it should be because you, the player, is trying to figure things out, not because they want you to stand there or the penalty is die. I understand they spawn you right outside the Emmy door, so it's not that big of a deal, but I just personally didn't like these moments because I didn't feel like they added anything really. I was just like trying to just get through it and get to the next part. When you're trying to move on past a part as fast as possible instead of like stopping to smell the roses, so to say, and enjoy the game, then you know that that part of the game is a weak spot. And I feel like that's what everybody's trying to do in this game, at least from what I've seen. You have the option to run as well, but it can't be overstated how dangerous that is in a Metroid game, especially if you don't know where you're going, or if you're not a speedrunner who memorized the entire game map. Now, literally everything, okay, that you know about where to go is based on the map, and if you are a speedrunner and you know everything ahead of time, then good for you. This part isn't a problem. Keep in mind, there is a very small parry window if you get caught by the Emmy and it catches you. If you hit that parry window, then you can stun it for a second, and then you're able to slide under its legs if need be. But for me, anyways, this window worked with very little consistency, which I come to understand that that's probably also the point, but still, there should be consistency. When I see the little yellow spark, I would press the parry button, and then sometimes she would parry, as she should. Other times, nothing. I don't know, nothing would happen, and she would die. I just feel like the Emmy is awful, and this game would have done better to replace it with something else scary, outside of the Emmy. I don't have much else to complain about for this game that I haven't already mentioned, but, well, actually, I do have this one thing, although it's not the worst unless you're a completionist, but this game hides a lot of secrets behind difficult optional bonus stuff, which, you know, if you are a completionist in of itself, it isn't that bad, but man, some of these things they're asking you to do is kind of nuts, frankly. I'm going to cite one example here that I find particularly extreme and egregious before moving on. So, here we go. You start about here, okay? Not too bad. Then, you have to shoot this door and start your speed boost. Okay then, I'm with you. Alright. Now, I want you to get through this door and immediately charge your Shine Spark. Alright, gotcha. Now, jump down here, shoot this door, run through it, and drop. Then slide through this opening, then shoot down while you fall. Then trigger your Shine Spark in midair and boost up this hill. Then quickly slide under this opening and almost immediately store another Shine Spark. And then fall off this little cliff and Shine Spark in the air again. This time up this hill. Fall down this last part and finally trigger your Shine Spark and you're done. Alright, here's the whole thing at full speed, and keep in mind, it's not itself perfect the way I did it in the footage, but it did the job. Also keep in mind that I've done this once before on this save file, so there are more blocks that would be there, and more legwork that you would need to do as a result, but, you know, the finish line is here, right here. And this is where the Shine Spark blocks would ordinarily be that you have to destroy. Now, if that sounded insane, that's because it is. Also, to the best of my knowledge, this is how Nintendo intended us to get through this area of this game, to get this power-up. That's insane! Alright, I know that you can use this area if you know how to do all that to sequence break the game and get the gravity suit early. I understand that, but that's not even what this is. Alright, this is to get this power-up. The power-up that's on the other side of this. That is insane to me. I don't think any bonuses, alright, should be that skill-intensive, but rather be more clever somehow. Possibly make a block type that the radar can't pick up. That would help. But either way, there are several other hidden items that are pretty skill-intensive as well that I didn't mention, and while it didn't stop me, clearly, I feel it alienates many players who will never be able to get these power-ups at all. That's all. I'll leave it alone now, though. You get it. You understand. Now, let's move on to all the things that I like, which is to say, everything else. This exploration is nice, and while it doesn't, and probably never will, match the atmosphere of Super Metroid, barring a one-to-one remake of that game using this engine, it does Metroid right. Whatever you expect to do in a Metroid game, it's here. It definitely puts the Metroid in Metroidvania. Did I say Metroid enough for you? You explore the world to the best of your abilities, find power-ups, and try to remember, and also use the map and see where you haven't been, and see where your new power-ups will fill in and allow you to explore if you were to backtrack back to that location and all that. That's the formula. It's awesome. These games famously unlock your endorphins with aha moments and sprinkling in power-ups that might make you feel smart for finding them. Who knows? When you find the Various suit, you'll probably be happy by virtue of the heat-proofness that it offers, which will unlock big chunks of the map. But getting the Gravity suit makes Samus entirely immune to whatever the environment can dish out. So the enemies are really the only thing you have to worry about. I'm loving that. It's great. Really. So that doesn't mean nothing is a challenge anymore by any means, but just because Samus can now hang out in lava like it's water, which in of itself she could just hang out in water like it's air, she still takes damage from flame-throwing enemies, though, for some reason. And or enemies that use heat to attack. One day, game devs are going to catch on to this kind of crap. And they're going to fix it, I swear. But, aside from that, there's still a few more things to discuss. The bosses in this game are very, very classic Metroid feeling. But they use new concepts for these bosses to make them fun and also quite challenging. Well, mostly new. And mostly fun. The bosses such as Kraid are pretty basic when it comes to Metroid since he's a legacy boss. You know what to expect here, and I have absolutely no idea how he even got to ZDR in the first place. Like, the magical power of fan service must have resurrected him, and only him, and not any of the other monsters from previous games, and teleported his fat ass to ZDR for reasons. Anyway, he uses the same patterns and fighting style as he used to, with the solution being to blast him in the mouth with missiles, as it always is. You would think he'd close his mouth at this point. Now, by the time this video releases, what I'm about to say will be old news, even though this video is dropping less than a month after the game releases, but I'll retread that anyways. So, if you sequence break the game and get the Morph Ball bombs early, the devs over at Mercury Stream put a little Easter egg in it to let you insta-kill Kraid, just for shits and gigs. There's really no reason to include this, but they did it anyways, so yeah. It isn't even that great for speedrunning since you can't do it until the second phase of the fight, I'm pretty sure, but it is what it is. Anyways, the other full-fledged bosses, like Mr. Lovecraft here, come up with better overall concepts. They need you to dodge his generic damage orbs of video gaminess, and use the switches on the side of the room to change the water level and move to opposite sides of the room to deal damage in various ways. It's not the craziest concept, but it fits right in. Or this laser beam shooting abomination of sin that the game alludes to fighting earlier in the game when it's presumed dead in a room somewhere else that it couldn't possibly get out of without completely wrecking the environment and basically burrowing a hole that Samus can take straight to the boss room. But that's not what happened because the game needs to happen. But whatever. They do whatever. This boss is pretty hard, but like most Metroid bosses, its patterns are learnable easier than, say, a Dark Souls boss, and certainly goes easier on you than a boss from, like, Cuphead or something. Still a more dreadful boss than the Emmy, to be sure. Speaking of killing the Emmy, I'm gonna tear into that real quick before wrapping this up, but you have to kill this Dollar General Clover Valley brand mother brain knockoff called a Central Unit, which there are multiple of in the game, hidden and buried somewhere deep within the Emmy zones, to unlock a temporary power-up called an Omega Beam. A little melodramatic, I think, but alright. Anyways, you have to sample the weapons 2 modes just to leave the damn room. Then, you gotta use the stream version to melt the Emmy's faceplate for whatever reason, and then you gotta hit it with the charge shot. The best part about this is having the Emmy gone for good. That's the best part about the whole ordeal. So, couldn't wait for that. Once it's gone, you get some sort of power-up. I have no more opinions on the Emmy, but I just wanted to explain this so I can give my opinion that the Emmy should still be something else, and I still hate it and wish they came up with something else, really anything else. Anyways, as the game starts to wrap up, they start to pit you against these spear guys here, who they copy and paste and make you fight several times. Sometimes you do that in a row, and it's not super great, but it is what it is. Now, I don't hate these enemies. They are well designed and pretty well implemented, but I may be biased sorta, since I love fighting enemies my own size in video games. Now, because they usually do away with the gimmicks for those kind of fights in favor of nice ebb and flows, which I appreciate. Not too much to say about them, but I do kind of despise these fucking guys. I'm not sure what else to call them, but they are annoying, and the way they fight is also pretty meh in my opinion. But I don't know why, but I started out kind of struggling against it when you fight it by itself. But I got used to it, and then in repeat encounters, I began to struggle again when they decided to throw two of the fuckers at me. So it's pretty upsetting to encounter them, and when they do double you, they just turn it into a cat and mouse game. That can be kind of like a mini bullet hell at times, but I don't mind a single one at this point, at least not anymore, but two at once legitimately got on my nerves. I died too many times to them that I'd like to admit, and since my health bar melts away like sugar in water anytime I get lightly tapped on my pinky toe, I hate it. I hate how nothing in the game has a health bar, by the way. I don't know why, but I do much better when I have those in games. That's a small issue, but it's not that bad. Just throwing it out there. My consensus on these a-holes, though? Fuck these guys. Moving on. Finally, you get to the end of the game, and you have to fight Ravenbeak. I swear, who comes up with this stuff? It's like my mom naming me Black Hair at birth. Just dumb, but whatever. I swear these nitpicks are not amounting up to much. I swear it. I just like to complain sometimes, believe me. This is a good game, though. This boss has several phases that mix together all the stuff you've learned throughout the game in one 3 1/4 phase fight. He's a Chozo, and he wears a version of a Chozo power suit like Samus does. So he shoots like her, shines sparks like her, and fights in various other ways like her. But also, he does his own thing, mostly. The fight has you jump, crouch, phase shift, and use Samus's various other tools to get it done. They use QTEs to finish off the phase of the fight and, move on to the next phase, and he is really challenging, but I don't hate it. And it's not unfair, which is good. Mostly because they gave him pretty paltry attack power compared to everything else in the game, and that's probably due to the duel-like aspect that they were going for, and the multiple phases being too tough. If he hit as hard as everything else, he'd kill you instantly before you even got to the second phase. When you're done, you get told you're the most dangerous thing in the universe, but then you still get held at arm's reach for some stupid reason. Enough for the plot to thicken, and you get a shiny new suit called the Metroid suit. And we'll probably never see it again, and we're not allowed to keep it, but that's usual, I guess. Whatever. Its beam is OP and lets you do the final quarter of the 3/4 phase fight that is Ravenbeak. It's more of a formality, really, and segues into the traditional escape sequence of a Metroid game to close things out. Really good stuff here, and a solid entry in the franchise overall. that godlike feeling when you get that 100% completion in any map of the game. Oh, so good. Well, that's been it. Metroid Dread, phenomenal. A great stepping stone, and another game that's on its way to the annals of Metroid history. It does it right. It does just about all of it right. It does the same things that the old ones did, especially with the power-ups and all that, and it rehashes the same old stuff, and that's just fine. I'm okay with that. The first Metroid game I ever played was Super Metroid, and that was in the 90s. I'm old. Yeah. I don't know if you can tell. So, anyway, yeah, and I loved it. And I just kept playing that thing. Something with it had me enamored. And I've been a fan ever since. So, again, this follows in that footsteps. This does the same kind of stuff. And it's a great game. It really is. If you haven't played it, I recommend giving it a shot. Even if you watched my spoiler-filled video, play it anyway. It's wonderful. And you'll have a good time, I think, with just about everything. I don't know how often I'm going to go back to it as far as replayability. The problem with New Game Plus not really being there is something that you'd think in 2021, almost 2022, we would have figured out by now. But I guess not. It's still going to plague us as the game industry, so, whatever. Either way, I'm biased. Again, sorry about my bias, but especially as far as Metroid games go, I'm going to have to give this a 4 out of 5. So you know what's next. I'd like to thank you for staying so sexy on the line. You guys have a good one.